you're live.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to City Policy Committee meeting of April 28, 2021. I'm calling the meeting to order at 4 p.m. Madam Clerk, please go ahead and read meeting procedures.
Thank you. The procedures adopted for this meeting meet or exceed the standards set forth in the Governor Gavin Newsom's Order N-25-20, which allows public meetings like this one to be held by way of teleconference to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. At this time, I will conduct roll call, and I would like to ask the chair to recognize me afterwards to confirm certain matters for the record. Chair Verose?
Yes.
Vice Chair Armstrong?
Here.
Thank you. Based on the responses to roll call, the record should reflect that all committee members can hear the proceedings clearly. If there are no objections, the record will further reflect that each committee member believes, based on voice or facial recognition or otherwise, that the persons representing themselves to be council members are in fact council members. Seeing no objection, I will turn the meeting back over to the chair with a reminder that all votes must be taken by roll call.
Thank you. Item 2, public comment or written communication. At this time, members of the public are encouraged to address the policy committee on any item not already included in tonight's agenda. Members of the public who are participating via Zoom will have the opportunity to make comments to the policy committee live through the Zoom application. Comments should not exceed 3 minutes. No committee action can be taken at this meeting on issues raised during public comment, whether submitted by email or Zoom. To comment, please click the raise your hand button or *9 on your telephone to request to speak. When it is your turn, you will be unmuted to make your comment for up to 3 minutes. After the allotted time, you will then be remuted. Written comments submitted were provided to the committee prior to the start of this meeting and made a part of the public record. Written public comment will no longer be read aloud during the meeting. Madam Clerk, okay, right now I'll go ahead and open public comment. Is now open. Madam Clerk, any public comment, please?
Chair Verose, at this time, I have no request for public comment.
Thank you. Then we'll go ahead and close the public comment. Okay. Item 3, approval of minutes. Item 3.1, Policy Committee regular meeting, February 24, 2021, 4 p.m. Vice Chair Armstrong, any feedback?
No, I'll move to approve item 3.1.
I second it. So moved and second. Any further discussion? There's none. So Madam Clerk, please vote.
You have before you the minutes of February 24th, 2021 for the Policy Committee meeting for your approval or amendment. Chair Verose?
Yes.
Vice Chair Armstrong?
Yes.
Thank you. It's been moved by 2-0 vote.
Thank you. Item 4, unfinished business, none. There is nothing there. So going to item number 5, new business. Item 5.1, Crow Canyon Gardens and Mertz Restaurant, update on recommendation to remove the structures staff reported by Senior Civil Engineer Rod. So Rod, please go ahead.
Thank you. Just give me a second here. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so today's presentation will be on the Crow Canyon Gardens and Mudd's Restaurant and an update on the recommendations to remove the structures. So just a little background here. There's the site we're discussing, the Croquet Gardens and Mud site. This parcel is the Croquet Gardens parcel in yellow, and the Muds parcel is in orange. And again, this is the interior shot of the restaurant building itself. Again, this is a follow-up to the previous policy committee meeting held on February 24th, where the policy committee reconsidered the city council's acceptance of the recommendation to demolish the Muds restaurant building. And again, if you want a full background on this, I recommend you look at the staff reports attachments. At this meeting, staff presented 4 scenarios. Scenario A was a full park and structure renovation per the Gates and Associates plans as proposed by the Nature Foundation, including a prefabricated bathroom. Scenario B, we looked at park renovation, just the park itself, not saving any of the structures per the Gates plans, and building a new 1,500 square foot classroom with a kitchenette and also a prefabricated bathroom. Scenario C, which was presented, again, park renovation per the Gates plans, but instead of a classroom, a shade structure or pavilion with an outdoor kitchen and a prefabricated bathroom. And scenario D, similarly, was a park renovation, but just in its existing state, not per the Gates plans. And again, no new structures and just replacing existing components, but adding a bathroom. So these 4 scenarios were presented at that meeting, and staff was provided direction to look at a couple more alternatives to these 4 that were presented. So staff contacted Wood Rogers and Leonakis, the consultants who previously did the analysis for us the first time. And based on the feedback we received from the policy committee, we had the meeting with them and discussed a couple of options. And they came back with these 3 different scenarios to look at. One is called the Jewel, which was one of the policy committee's desire to look at saving one building, or I'm sorry, not one building, but one room, one small room for small events. Another scenario that they were considering was called the Event, which was saving more than one room to hold larger events. And the celebration scenario was the scenario where we were not going to save the building, but instead construct a pavilion or a monument to highlight some of the features of the Muds building. We received the cost estimate from the consultants, and it came out to be about $63,000. But since the writing of the staff report, we have been in discussions with the consultant to bring the price down just under about $59,000. In addition to also discussing other options with them to maybe reduce the scope if the cost is an issue. So again, here's the Mud site plan, the building itself. These are the main rooms. This is the kitchen area, which I think in all the scenarios we realized could not be saved. And again, the open garden, office, and the bathrooms as well. So the scenarios that Leonakis and Wood Rogers were going to look at was basically saving, some area of the main rooms to kind of feature the ceiling, which is located in these areas. Also, direction from the policy committee was to look at the National Historic Registration process, which staff did look at. And it was determined that Muds may qualify as a state historical point of interest if it follows any of these criteria here. First, last, only, or most significant of its type within the region, or if it's associated with an individual group having a profound influence on the history of the area, or if it's a prototype or outstanding example of a period style architectural movement or construction, or is one of the most notable works or best surviving work in the local region of a pioneer architect, designer, or master builder. So if that's been determined, you can get a directional sign to let residents know where this historic monument is, but we could also enhance that with our own monumentation as well. So just a little bit of review. To date, the city has spent approximately $25,000 on assessing the Muds building itself, as well as $4,000 in community research. If the policy committee wishes to move forward with reviewing these design scenarios. Again, it'd be approximately $63,000 or about $59,000 right now, which money could be funded from previous RDA funds and the Park Development Fund. Following approval, if that's the desire of the policy committee, the staff would make sure to secure the funding and then enter into a sole source contract with the consultants we worked with previously. And in discussions with them, moving forward, if we were to do that, it would take about 2 months to do the analysis and get cost proposals. And then we would bring those results back to the policy committee for further discussion and direction. So if you have any additional questions, I'm here for that.
Okay, thank you, Rod. Vice Chair Armstrong, any questions to Rod?
Rod, as you were going through that, a thought came to mind when we're talking about in a couple of those scenarios, the bathroom was to be renovated, and I think I read through there that in some cases it would be gender neutral. In some cases, if we did multiple room renovation, then it would have to be perhaps a multi-user, not just kind of a single user bathroom. I guess my question is, in that kind of scenario, would those bathrooms also be the only ones at the park that would be accessible to other members of the public, the other park goers or community gardeners and things like that? Because I thought when we were previously talking about restrooms at Crow Canyon Gardens, whether a prefab or whatever, it would be for just the public as well. But now sounds like in these potential renderings here, if we go forward with this analysis, then it would be probably more suited to anyone using just those renovated buildings. Am I getting that right? Or
it could be looked at either way. It really depends on the location where you put them. If it's an outdoor prefabricated bathroom, then it could be accessible to the general public, not necessarily those who are accessing the mud site.
okay. Yeah, I guess my other question, and whether you or Kathy or anyone else maybe have the answer on this, but regardless of the direction either we proceed or the city council proceeds, is there some kind of a sunk cost in terms of a landscaping contractor or something like that? You know, you talked about Wood Rogers and Leonakis, and it's going to cost $59,000, but approximately to do this analysis. But is there some other cost, or would there have been a cost anyway, even if we didn't do this analysis, that might kind of be balanced against that number?
Well, the cost proposals by Wood Rogers and Leonakis are literally just to create cost estimates of whatever future project you want to do. So if it's decided that you want to do the Jewel, for example, then obviously there's design costs associated with that particular scenario. Okay. Either it be landscaping or the building itself or engineering and so forth. So there are always going to be additional costs beyond this analysis for the actual design.
Okay, got it. Yeah, honestly, those are the only questions I have at this time.
Sounds good. Madam Clerk, please check anybody for public comment. I'm opening public comment now.
Chair Veros, we do have requests for public comment.
Please let them in.
First public comment will come from caller user number 1.
Caller user number 1, please go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry, it took a while for them to unfreeze me. I have a question. Why is it that we keep spending money on bathrooms? I am really sick and tired of this. As a taxpayer, I don't know why we have to keep going back and forth on bathroom. It is a very simple, human nature kind of behavior. It really angers me that we keep going back and forth on the bathroom issue, starting with the school. This is a communist agenda. In China, they don't have any doors. How about, hey, civil engineer, Mr. Rui, right? Is it Mr. Rui? Let's go ahead and just take off all the doors. Just take off all the doors. Let's all go to the bathroom like the mainland Chinese, okay? Like the communist Chinese. That way we don't need to spend any money. We can smell each other. We can hear each other. We can all be one another. How about that? Please stop this ridiculous insanity, okay? Stop. Just stop. If it's not broken, don't fix it. Thank you.
Any other callers, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Public
The
comment?
next request for public comment will be Jim Blickenstaff.
Hi, Jim, please go ahead.
Hello, hello, Sridhar. Very quickly, I wanted to point out that there's an option here that still needs to be looked at. And it's what I call the preservation option. And it's a simple starting point for a lot of the other options you have available. And it's simply to get a cost, it'll be a reasonable cost by comparison, to preserving the Mudd's restaurant, the iconic building as is. Just simply preserve it as is for the time being, structurally sound, do any enhancement you need to do. And the cost of that will then take care of the building for the indefinite future and allow you to expand on the other options. The options that originated with the Park and Community Services were more or less all or nothing. It was a big upfront cost for activities and community activities in the building or no building. And we obviously want to get away from that because there's different ways to preserve an iconic structure as it is. And it can have minimal uses and still be part of the history of that area, which it is. It's a key part of that park. It's a reason for the park. So let's look at the minimal costs of preserving the building as is to give us that first stage of looking at the other stages we can look at. And in the process, we'll have that time available to review the other ones. I think I would take this to the council at some point as a serious option because they're looking for different ways of looking at this scenario for this building and this park that are different than the ones that were looked at the Parks and Community Services and give the council more flexibility to decide. But the first stage has to be that's simple preservation in terms of comparing the costs to demolition and then putting up a pavilion just to save the building as an iconic structure only will be cheaper than that. Now, if you want to expand later to uses of the interior, that's fine if the citizens wish that. But in keeping with the passive uses of the park, I think a starting point is to protect the building at the beginning stage as somewhat of a passive use, not a lot of activities inside the building. The cost will be cheaper. It'll still be an important part of the history of the site. And then you can expand from that into other options later. But you need that first step as part of the package that the city can see to proceed with their other options. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Our next request is from Don B.
Don, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chairman Veros and Vice Chairman Armstrong. I want to state up front that I'm currently a Parks Commissioner for the City of San Ramon, but I'm not speaking to you right now as a Parks Commissioner, but as a private resident of over 35 years. I would like to encourage the two of you to take the existing information that's been collected, reviewed, debated, and make a recommendation to move forward with your scenario C, or what the Parks Commission had recommended, their scenario, their point 3, that was unanimously approved by the Parks Commission to renovate Crow Canyon Gardens. The fact that you guys would even consider spending $63,000 or $59,000 or whatever the number is, dollars of taxpayer money on this study doesn't show the fiscal responsibility that many of us residents feel you have. The two of you are elected to make the easy decisions and the hard ones. All I ask is that you please do your job. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, any more public comments?
Chair Veros, at this time, I have no other request for public comment.
Thank you. Then I'll close the public comment. Vice Chair Armstrong, would you like to go with your feedback, or you want me to go with the feedback? It's up to you.
Yeah, I've got a couple things to say, and I appreciate the input from the public on this issue. I'm not sure I have heard anything new tonight in terms of information, from the public. So I do appreciate the hard work of the staff in putting this together, and the good detail presented by Wood Rogers and Lionakis in the staff report. But as I mentioned last time, and one of the callers indicated this too, I think we have to do what's best for the city and be fiscally responsible, and, do things in a fiscally responsible way. And for years, this property has been discussed. It's been analyzed. It's been reanalyzed. The Parks Commission has looked at it. Facilities Commission, Council looked at it and voted, then asked to reconsider it, sent it to the Policy Committee. Here we are a second time around with the Policy Committee. We just seem to be kicking the can down the road some more. I supported the original recommendation number 3, and I still do. But as a member of the Policy Committee, the Council asked us to take a look at this, and we asked the staff to come back with some analysis, and so we're doing that now. Today, I was looking for primarily some kind of rough order magnitude analysis on some numbers, and primarily focused on kind of the difference between demolishing everything and perhaps saving a representative piece of the old building. But to see in the report that with the updated information from Rod, that it's still going to cost us $59,000 on top of the $25,000 we already spent on contractors and consultants and cleanup, and then the $4,000 is indicated for a survey of what does the community want at this park. And here we are still talking about spending more money. And we're no closer to turning Crow Canyon Gardens into the type of park that our residents have asked us for. So, I think for the right reasons and for the right things, I think we do need to do our due diligence and make those decisions to spend big dollars. But I just don't see that saving this building, or even a part of it, is a critical need that warrants the city spending more money just to do more analysis. So, my recommendation is to bring this back to the council, and stick with my original recommendation of number 3 from the original staff report, but plus, putting in some kind of a high quality marker, maybe some signage or a storyboard to recognize the historical significance of that location. I think the staff over time can apply for this California points of historical interest, see if it qualifies for that designation. But I don't think you need the building to be able to make that application and get that designation. One way or the other, this issue is going to have to go back to the full council for decision. So whether we get a 2-0 recommendation here or a 1-1 split, it's going to have to go back. So I say let's send it back now. And I frankly, I'd like to hear your discussion on this, but I'll make a motion at some point here, but I'd like to hear what you have to say as well.
Thank you. Thanks for your feedback. So I had opportunity to work on this item for as a commissioner for years, and now as a council member. So our staff worked on this for years. There's like some community members, they worked on this one for years. So at this point, I'm not just looking about current financial fiscal issue, or about the what we are going to get out of this in pretty short period of the time. But I'm looking at more like a long-term plan, how we can make this historical mark or the building can be preserved. But at the same time, I totally agree with you that we need to be fiscally responsible, right? Because these are the tax-paying dollars. So I don't think we really need any analyst or any new consultant company. After all this work that we've done, commissioners, city staff, communities, like tons of work is done. So I think we really know what we need. I don't think we need a new review like done by a consultant to tell us what we need at this point. I think so. For me, I think we should go with a dual scenario where we can preserve, includes one room that could be used for small events and focus on unique barrel ceiling, so that for this, in order to pick this choice, I don't think we need to have any consultant required. Like we can go with this option based on all our I'm telling, even if you bring a consultant, the amount of knowledge base that we already have, it will take years for that person to come and get to that point. So for me, we need to preserve this structure. And also San Ramon is changing pretty fast. So whether community likes it, like there are certain segments they may like it or not, but things are changing. We, if you see San Ramon like few years back, and if you go on a weekend to our city center in that area, how vibrant it is totally changed. So, and there's more and more changes will be coming, whether we like it or not. And I think this will add a very good asset, as a good asset for our tourism, whether it's a business tourism or it is for community tourism, where we can work with our Discovery San Ramon also to see how we can leverage and monetize on it. So that's why I'm not really worried that much about finance at this point, because we can generate much more revenue. I'm pretty confident that we can generate much more revenue on this structure. That's not a problem for me. And also, one more thing is bringing in consultant, another 2 months of spending time on this one. I don't think that is a good idea. So considering two things, one is the time duration. I don't want to spend another 2 months just for a consultant to review, and we spent $63,000. Like someone told me that it is like, that reminds me, there's like a saying, right, where bringing consultant is like giving your watch, borrowing your watch, so that the consultant will tell you what is your time on the watch. So I want to avoid that. And also I want to avoid wasting 2 months and then coming back another 2 months, 3 months, I don't know what it will be. So I would advise that city staff should move forward with the option of dual scenario, and we need to start this. I mean, once again, as Vice Chair Armstrong mentioned, we need to go to council again for full approval, but I want to get this move to council soon and start getting the work done as soon as possible. I really want some good timeline on this and get it done before community really get fed up with this whole thing. That's my thought process, Vice Chair Armstrong.
Yeah. So I think what I heard you say was you are pushing for the dual scenario and go ahead and spend the money now and move forward. Did I get that right?
Yeah, so I don't want any more analysis and consultant. I don't want to spend any. It's like 63,000 or under 50,000, whatever the money. Like I don't want any of those analysis, so that the consultant will come and tell us that, oh, you picked dual. No, I don't. I know what exactly we are looking for. after all these studies and everything, I think we should go with Jewel. We need to save the money, and instead of paying that money to consultant, better we use that money for the structure itself.
Yeah, well, I'm more in the celebration scenario camp, which, as I read it, is to, you know, demolish the entire building, replace it with a pavilion or a monument. And so I think we're split on this.
No worries. So at this point, I think we should be able to recommend City Council about our recommendation that we would like to go with. In your scenario, also one common item between us is that we don't want any consultant in this case, right? You still want consultant in this case?
As I understand it, it's within the discretion of the city manager if we want, if within his funding authority to do this, but I don't feel that it's necessary. I don't feel that we gain anything if we just do this in an additional $59,000 worth of analysis. And I know we asked the staff to go back and take a look at this, but just to spend another $59,000, whether the city manager has the authority or not, I don't think we should push forward with that.
Sounds good. So we are common on that one. We don't want to go with a consultant. So, but then we want to go with, your recommendation is to go with the celebration scenario, and my recommendation is the Jewel scenario. Let's go with that recommendations to the City Council, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, my recommendation is, you know, I said celebration. If that is in fact the original recommendation number 3 from the original time we did the City Council vote, then and it looks to me like that is, then that is what I support.
Sounds good. So, Madam Clerk, are we good with the recommendation, or like, oh, we need to do the motion, right? Sorry. Okay. So would you like to make a motion that we want to recommend, like, one is Jewel and another one is celebration? We don't want any consulting services on this one. So we pick one of them and move forward.
Maybe I need to ask the city attorney. Is he here? There he
Yeah,
is.
so it sounds like the motion would be to that the committee does not recommend us any further study, but would recommend that the council choose between the Jewel and, I'm sorry, the commemorative options.
Celebration.
And that would be what moves forward. And you may say so moved if you want to do it that way.
No, I'll move that we take it back to the City Council with for consideration of either the Jewel scenario or the celebration scenario.
I second that. Just to make sure we added that, right? So we don't want any consulting services in this case. So I move that, and Madam Clerk, please vote. Roll call on vote.
Thank you. So it has been moved and seconded that no further study be conducted and that the item be returned to City Council to make a consideration between the Jewel option and the celebration option. Chair Verose,
Yes.
Vice Chair Armstrong.
Yes.
Thank you. It is 2-0 vote in favor of referring it back to City Council.
Thank you. Okay, next item, 5.2, Residential Traffic Calming Program Handbook and Toolkit Update, presented by Lisa, Transportation Division Manager.
Very good. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Verose and Vice Chair Armstrong. This afternoon, I'm here to present to you the draft Residential Traffic Calming Program Handbook and Toolkit. We began this endeavor last September with the Transportation Advisory Committee recommending forming a subcommittee responsible to work with staff to update the Residential Traffic Calming Program Handbook and Toolkit. Subcommittee members from the TAC include Billy Hurley, Al Pacheco, and Joy Bhattacharya. The subcommittee meetings were determined and held bi-monthly from September through December of last year, and then monthly starting January of this year. So our goal today is to provide you with a summary of what has transpired to date. With that said, included in your staff report is the draft RTC handbook, toolkit, and then today's presentation. So residential traffic calming is not unique to San Ramon. Many cities across the country implement some form of a residential traffic calming program. Here in the Bay Area, it's very common for cities to implement a residential traffic calming program. There are differences in how the programs are implemented, but the ultimate goal is to address local residential traffic calming. For San Ramon, it's a very collaborative effort. We have staff from transportation, traffic engineering, public services, and the traffic enforcement division of the police department. Ultimately, all of the residential traffic calming requests that come into the city via email, a CRM, a phone call, through one of you or through the rest of the council members or through the city manager's office, all of the RTC requests are logged, they are tracked, the work is completed, and then ultimately all RTC items are presented to the Transportation Advisory Committee. If needed, they are ultimately presented to the City Council. So with that, we have this afternoon's presentation. To give you some background information, the San Ramon Residential Traffic Calming Program has been in place since 1990, with the first Residential Traffic Calming Handbook and Toolkit adopted in 2006. So it's been many years since we've had the program or the Handbook and Toolkit updated. So we are here today to provide you with an update on where we are with the Handbook and Toolkit. The handbook focuses on policies and procedures, while the toolkit provides tools that can be used to address various types of traffic calming issues. The RTC program is a key component of the Transportation Advisory Committee. The policies, the procedures, and the tools embedded in the program provide a framework for the Transportation Advisory Committee to address concerns raised by residents. The primary issues that are brought forth to the TAC are speeding on local roadways and the volume of vehicles on residential streets. The common theme that we hear is that there are too many people driving too fast on my street. Therefore, the program focuses on local transportation issues such as cut-through traffic and speeding. The program outlines a variety of traffic calming measures to implement on local residential streets, and the program provides an opportunity for local residents to work very closely with the Transportation Advisory Committee and with city staff to identify traffic issues and concerns and to determine the appropriate solutions. Within the Public Works Department, the program is implemented by a number of city staff. It starts with our Public Works Director, Maria Ferner. I am intimately involved in the program. We have our city engineer, Brian Bornstein, our senior traffic engineer, Deborah Fear, associate traffic engineer, Raul Roque, our transportation specialist, PJ Dute. She's the primary person that receives all the initial RTC requests, and then our office specialist, Amy Seacon. And then we work very closely with our Transportation Advisory Committee members, and all of the members are listed on the screen here. As I mentioned earlier, it's a very collaborative effort between city staff within transportation, traffic engineering, public services, and traffic enforcement. We work very closely with the citizens of San Ramon, and we work very closely with a number of homeowner associations. Ultimately, if there is a residential traffic calming infrastructure item that's going to move forward, it ultimately requires city council approval and authorization of funding. And I'll talk more about that briefly as we move forward. So the mission statement for the residential traffic calming program is that the RTC program focuses on local transportation issues. I think it's become very clear that it's all about local transportation on residential streets. It is designed to coordinate the collaboration between city staff, the TAC, and citizens in an effort to produce effective traffic calming throughout San Ramon neighborhoods. The goal of the program is to establish procedures that will facilitate the installation of traffic calming measures that will enhance the quality of life on city neighborhoods by mitigating the negative impacts of vehicle traffic on residential streets. There are 6 objectives for the program. The first objective is to promote safe and pleasant conditions for people who live, walk, bike, or drive on local residential streets, reduce speed on traffic or reduce speed of traffic on local streets, reduce the number of cut-through traffic on local neighborhood streets. We want to preserve and enhance walking and biking access to neighborhood destinations, facilitate resident involvement in residential traffic management activities, and then ultimately, our goal is to provide a process to prioritize the residential traffic calming requests that come through the city. Embedded in the program are the 4 E's, and you hear a lot about the 4 E's, whether it's through the Safe Routes to School program or through the residential traffic calming program. So the 4 E's, I'll just touch on these briefly, are education, engineering, enforcement, and emergency response services. The education component of the program is that city staff can assist residents to make informed decisions about neighborhoods by educating the residents by means of brochures, the city website, and or social media. Informed residents can then better assess the degree of the traffic calming required for their particular street. What you have here in front of you is a draft letter that we send to a homeowners association when we are getting ready to install the portable radar speed display sign on a residential street. The engineering component, the engineering aspect focuses on traffic studies, data analysis, and implementation of physical changes to a street with the objective of reducing vehicle speeds or volumes on a single street or a network. What you have before you is a sample of a warrant study that we conduct for in-roadway lights and or flashing beacons. This is just a sample of a data study or a traffic study or a data analysis that is done. We work very closely with the Traffic Enforcement Division of the Police Department. In fact, I would say about 90% of the requests that come in to our office is for speeding on local residential streets. The San Ramon Police Department enforces traffic control measures and they target identified areas. In fact, several years ago, we started a program called Selective Enforcement. We actually have a form that is completed by staff. We submit it to the police department, and then the police department does what we call selective enforcement. They will go to a specific neighborhood and target that neighborhood for speeding and or work with the residents to determine whether or not there's actually a speeding issue taking place. If so, we move on to other measures. Or in most situations, once we install the radar speed display sign, and residents are driving and they are reminded of the speed limit for that street, that typically deters the number of speeders on that local street. And then emergency response services, it's very important that emergency response services, it refers to the collaborative effort between the Public Works Department, the Police Department, and the San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District. Our goal is to develop policies that accommodate the safety, access, and response times of various emergency vehicles, as well as ensuring that the community-wide goals are maintained. So we want to make sure whatever infrastructure is installed, that emergency vehicles, whether it's police or emergency or ambulance or fire truck, they can access a neighborhood within a reasonable amount of time. So the changes to the handbook, There weren't a lot of significant changes, but there are some items that we want to bring to your attention. So we clarify, having had the residential traffic calming program in place for over 15 years, there's a lot of good information and updates that we wanted to provide in the handbook. So we clarified and updated the residential traffic calming phase 1 process. We clarified and updated the phase 2 process. And then we changed some of the language in the document to reflect today's conditions. The handbook is one section of the document. The toolkit is the second half. So in the toolkit, we changed the format of how the tools are identified in the toolkit. We added new tools. We included diagrams and photos of the tools. We added a new sample petition, and then we added a definition and acronym page to the end of the document. This slide, this shows you the prior handbook that was adopted in 2006. That's the cover page. We have a sample petition, and then we have a photo of a speed hump that was included in that document. The next slide will show you the new handbook. In your package for this afternoon's meeting is this handbook with the toolkit. I'm hoping you've had a chance to read all 61 pages. It is a draft. Obviously, it has not been approved by the City Council yet. So today we're presenting the draft handbook and toolkit to you. So in the handbook, I'm not going to go over all of the phases here, but in the handbook, we identify phase 1 of the residential traffic calming program. We also identify phase 2. And in phase 2, we actually spent a lot of time with the TAC subcommittee members to really make sure people understand what is phase 2, that if you call the city and you are requesting a speed hump on your street, that we're not going to go out the next day and approve a $30,000 speed hump on a street, that there's actually a process and you must go through the phase 1 process and then the phase 2 process. So in the handbook, we really detail what phase 2 entails so that people understand if there is going to be a speed hump that's going to be recommended to City Council to be installed on a street, there is a 3 to 6 month process that we are going to go through before we recommend the installation of a speed hump on a particular street. So the next 3 slides will highlight there are 24 tools that are in the toolkit. So these 3 slides highlight all 24 of the tools. In your document is the toolkit. All 24 of these items have a description of what the item is, has a photo of what the item is, and whether or not it's something that is practical on any given street throughout the city. So again, there are 24 examples in the toolkit, and these 3 slides highlight what those examples are. Again, we spent a lot of time with our subcommittee, with the transportation subcommittee, to go over all of those tools in the toolkit. I'm not going to go through all of them this afternoon, but they are explained in the toolkit, and there's a lot of good, valuable information in the toolkit for the residents with regard to the tools in the toolkit. So before we adopt this, our goal is to present the draft handbook and toolkit to you this afternoon. Again, it's included in your packet. Based on your comments and feedback, we will forward the final RTC handbook and toolkit to the City Council. Our goal is to bring that to the City Council on May 25th, pending your approval this afternoon. Once it's finalized by the City Council, we will work with our consultant to print a new handbook. We will print likely about 100 handbooks, and then we will print several hundred brochures. And the brochures are a trifold brochure, and they highlight how the RTC program works. And we use that to hand out to homeowners, associations, at community events. We have the brochures at all city facilities so that that information is available to the public. We will also post all this new information starting July 1st to the city's website, and then use all of our social media outlets to alert the public of the new handbook and toolkit. So with that, that concludes my presentation this afternoon. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Sheriff Rose, you are on mute.
Thank you, Lisa, for presentation. Vice Chair Armstrong, any questions?
No questions at this time.
Okay, so then I'll open for public comment. Madam Clerk, anybody for public comment?
We do have one request to speak from call-in user number 1.
Sounds good. Please let them in.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
So first of all, I want to thank Ms. Bobadilla. She has been doing a great job in our city, and I really appreciate living in our city where, I know that our city staff really cares about our safety. I do have a couple of suggestions. Number one is that instead of having the taxpayers of the city keep paying out for the speed bumps, as she mentioned before, how about if we, let the individual HOAs use their reserves to maybe put in like cameras that can pick up license plates for people who speed, and then have those images be forwarded to the police. In that case, we have two benefits. Number one, we can save our city reserves that goes to certain communities that really doesn't benefit the entire city because it's an HOA. Number two, it can also protect our police in enforcing, HOA calls because, what's going on these days. I think if we can minimize our police in HOA areas enforcing public traffic laws, I think it would be a win-win situation for everyone. And then lastly, I just have a little bit of a frustration sometimes for certain traffic lights that just don't move. I don't know why sometimes they don't move. I thought they're all censored. So I don't know why just certain ones that just don't respond very quickly. And that is all. Thank you so much.
Any more public comments?
There are no other requests for public comment at this time, Chair Veros.
Thank you. Then we'll go ahead and close the public comment. Vice Chair Armstrong, any comments?
My only comment is that the timing of this is good because I recently was looking at some social media and there was some input in there on a speeding issue. As you mentioned, that's probably the most common, one of the most common ones you get. And all the users on social media, it's like, well, call the police. And it seemed to be, it was like a single episode kind of thing. Probably wasn't really a residential traffic calming kind of scenario, but nevertheless, there was no discussion there at all of putting in a request or call DPW or try to get some kind of a residential traffic calming measure put in place. So I think this education aspect of this is really important. Getting the brochures out there, putting it on the city website, pushing it out, having it available at some of our community events to hand to people and distribute, social media, those kinds of things. I think that's a real win if we can get that information out to people that these 24 tools are available if it's determined that there really is a systemic issue in the area that needs to be addressed. So good timing on this, and thank you, Lisa, for your presentation and what you and the staff do.
Sure, you're welcome.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you, Lisa, for presentation. and sharing the toolkit as well as the big document for draft copy with us. As you know, like one of the key things that touch for every resident is the road, right? As soon as they every day, pretty much every resident get touch base with that. So the quality of life really depends on how we manage our traffic and within the city. So thanks for all the great work that your team is working on this, as well as Maria's team. Few questions I always get from the community residents is, hey, why don't we just add one speed bump? Because as Vice Chair Armstrong mentioned, is one common question we always get is speeding, right? So typically residents say that, hey, why don't we just put one speed bump? Or someone says that, why don't you just add one pedestrian zone? You know, I'm just thinking maybe along with all this great education and also the social media information that you're planning to share, is it possible for us to let people know that it costs a lot of money? Pedestrians, so that people don't, people think that pedestrian thing means just putting that zebra line and then done, right? So it's not that, it's more than that, the lighting and all that we need to do. So if possible, if we can add that information, that will help before they come to us and keep asking those things left and right.
Actually, Chair Rose, that's a very good idea. It just dawned on me that when we do the brochure, we can add an FAQ on the brochure. And that would probably be a very good question to put in, a question and a response. You know, what is a speed hump? How much does it cost? Why can't I just get one on my street versus 2 or 3? So that's a really good point for us to add to the brochure, a Q&A into the RTC brochure.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you for that feedback. That's very valuable. Thank you.
And also, as Vice Chair Armstrong mentioned, the timing is really perfect because, you know, post-COVID, I already started seeing a lot of traffic already in the street. So this is going to be definitely within next 6 months, I'm sure it will ramp up big time on the traffic side. So it's good that we are sharing this information ahead of that ramp up time. And yeah, thank you. Thanks for all the great work.
Thank you.
So on this item, we don't have any motion. So it's just always say, yeah, we accept the report. Thank you.
Yeah.
With that, we'll go to the next item. That is item 5.3, draft use of city flagpoles and display of flags policy review, presented by Stephen, Deputy City Manager.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Veros and Vice Chair Armstrong. Today we have a draft flagpole policy for your review. The city currently does not have a policy governing the use of flags or the use of city flagpoles. Flagpole policies address the use of city flagpoles through the government speech doctrine in order to preserve the right for governments to speak for itself. Flagpoles are not intended to serve as a form of free expression by the public. Last June, staff presented 2 flag policies to the City Council. The first policy reflected the current use of city flagpoles, and the second policy allowed for the display of commemorative flags. The council gave direction to develop a policy that prohibits the display of flags associated with religious, for-profit, or political organizations. The council then discussed whether flags from other nations should be flown and the potential locations for displaying commemorative flags. After some discussion, the council directed staff to pose both questions to the San Ramon Diversity Coalition. The Diversity Coalition chair asked both questions of the group to the group, and regarding the commemorative flag display location, in order of preference, they listed first, display on the City Hall marquee; second, display on a new flagpole at the corner of Bollinger Canyon Road and Alcosta Boulevard; and third, display in front of City Hall on the existing flagpole. For the question regarding flags from foreign nations, the response from the coalition was, quote, "Foreign country flags on government or public locations weren't popular or well received." So attached to this staff report, staff developed a draft policy based on the recommendations. And at this time, if you like, I can display the policy and we can go through it. It is about a page and a half, so that should be rather quick, or I can take questions, whichever you prefer.
So Vice Chair Armstrong, I'm ready for questions, but are you ready for?
Yeah, I have the policy in front of me. I don't need you to display it, Stephen.
Okay. So Steve, please go ahead.
So that concludes the presentation. We are looking for direction from the committee to bring this forward to the council, either the draft policy as written or any changes or modifications you'd like to make to the policy.
So Vice Chair Armstrong, any questions to Steve?
I don't have any questions. I may have a comment in a moment.
Okay. Madam Clerk, any public comments on this item?
Yes, we do have one request for public comment from call-in user number 1.
Okay. Caller user number 1, please go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm very disappointed that Deputy City Manager Spadowski is sort of circulating back a zombie issue that I believe, we've already resolved this like a year ago in the City Council meeting, where that, it was decided that as a city, we will honor our country, our city, and our state. That is all. Because otherwise, you're jeopardizing and exposing our city to lawsuits, to different diversity groups who may feel isolated, left out, discriminated for whatever reason. There are only 3 pole flags at this time. And I am very, very actually offended that such issue, instead of coming to the citizens, it was circulated to some sort of diversity coalition. What is that? Do they even live here? And if they live here, I've never heard of them before. So it's a very elitist group. So it makes this a very communist issue where it is a totalitarian type of, government. It is not democracy. So Deputy City Manager Spadowski could try, but please don't do this again. It was already decided last year. And also, please do me a favor. In Windermere, there is a park called 6 Pillar Park. The flags. Did somebody die in our city? Did somebody die in our country? Did somebody die in our state? Why are all those 3 flags always half-masted? It is such bad omen for our city, for our state, for our country. Please, if you can just take good care of those 3 flags in our city, I would be super grateful. Thank you.
Any more callers for public comment, Madam Clerk?
There are no more requests for public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. So in that case, we'll close the public comment. Vice Chair Armstrong, please go ahead.
Well, Stephen, I appreciate your report here, and I do appreciate the fact that you sought input from the Diversity Coalition. I believe that as the policy represents, our city flagpoles represent our government, and we should proudly display our U.S. flag and our California flag and our city flag. We should be making no other statements, or where appropriate. According to the policy, perhaps the POW MIA flag or Blue Star Mom's flag or other federally recognized flags, but we shouldn't be making any other statement on our flagpoles. And so I concur with the policy in that regard. I don't believe there's a place for other nations' flags, whether it's on our marquee or on our flagpoles. I do think that the marquee can be an appropriate place for commemorating or announcing information of interest to the public. I think we'd be wise to recognize that what is a passionate issue for some in support of a particular display may also be a passionate issue that will incite another group who has different feelings. And so I do think it's appropriate that in the policy that it includes a requirement for the city council to approve the display of a commemorative logo or symbol or flag, and only after consideration of all public input at a duly noticed meeting. So I support forwarding the draft policy to council as written for adoption.
Thank you. Steve, thank you very much for working on this. This is like much pending one policy that community was looking for. Thanks for getting this. So just to let you know that I'm steering committee member of San Ramon Valley Diversity Coalition. And when it came to our diversity coalition, the recommendations came like the request came like, what will the SRVDC would like to go for out of these three options. So our understanding in our steering committee meeting was that, do we want to pick 1, 2, or 3, or is it 3? So the idea behind giving that preference order was that, yes, we want to use all 3. That was from San Ramon Valley Diversity Coalition recommendation. And just to make sure, I once again talked to Mitchell, our chair of SRVDC, and he concurred with my understanding that we want to go with all 3 displays. So it's not like one above the other. So all 3 options, and all these items look pretty good for me, except for one item, that is commemorative flags shall only be digitally displayed exclusively on the San Ramon City Hall marquee. I think it should be up to city council members to decide whether they want to go with City Hall marquee or on a flagpole, given the requirement or the request that comes up. So I think the city council members should able to decide it based on the request that comes onto the table. So that's the only one item that I'm not in support. So I would recommend that we need to add that commemorative flag shall be displayed on San Ramon City Hall marquee or flagpole upon the recommendation from the city council members. But otherwise, all other looks pretty good for me.
And just to be clear, my position is to go forward with the document as written, to include that statement as written that says commemorative flags shall only be displayed digitally displayed exclusively on San Ramon City Hall marquee. I think we should reserve our city flagpoles solely for the official flags, U.S., state, or city, or other federally recognized flags.
Sounds good. So here we have both, everything is same, but I think this one item is different between Vice Chair Armstrong and me. So Martin, please help us here how to word it out.
Well, once again, you're presenting the council with the choice between 2 alternatives. So I would fashion the motion to be to adopt the policy as presented to the committee, but that the council have a choice between or pick between the policy as written, or to give the council the discretion to place a flag on a flagpole or other location.
And does this require a motion to that effect, or as
yes, and that's not, and if the committee cannot agree to that particular motion, then we'll have to work on that, because you may or may not agree that the council should make that or should have that recommendation.
Yeah, so I mean, I look at the recommended action. Staff recommends policy committee review the draft use of city flagpoles and display flags policy and provide further direction. And I have no further direction to provide, but I don't see that we need to make a motion. I see this is an administrative policy, so it needs to be adopted by the city council. So wouldn't we just have this discussion again at council?
Yeah, you don't actually need to make a motion on this. You can just inform the whole council as to what was discussed and where each of you individually fell on the issue.
Okay, so but then how this is going to be presented to the council? Like what is the recommendation that will be presented to the council?
Well, the staff report will reflect, and Stephen, you can add to this if you want, but the staff report would reflect that this was discussed and that in general, both committee members did approve of the policy. However, one committee member wanted it as is and the other wanted to allow the council to consider other locations besides the marquee.
Sounds good.
Okay, I'm good with that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, where are we? Excellent. So we are done with the item 5.3. Then item 6, policy committee comments. Yeah, Vice Chair, any comments?
No further comments. Thanks to everyone for their input tonight and their reports, and look forward to those items that we need to discuss further in council, and look forward to that opportunity.
Great, thank you. Thanks everyone. You have a great evening. So with this, I'm adjourning the call.